Let's get started. We're taking you back to October 18th, 2001. That's when 14-year-old Dwayne Jackson was gunned down just a few feet from his own front door. Here is his story.
Well, my son's name was Dwayne Jackson, and he was born on March 27th of 1987 as a twin. He has a twin sister. And I was just excited at the fact that at first I couldn't have any kids, and now I'm having two. Dwayne was a loving brother, always cared about anything someone would say or do to his sister. Funny, outspoken, loving kid that loved sports, loved to dress. At the time that he was murdered, the 18th of October, he had just began his first week of high school, which he was very excited about entering high school. He didn't like homework. He did not like homework. He would try to get his twin to do it for him, or he would do it and fold it up and put it in his pocket and say, it's done, don't worry about it, I've done my homework. Never liked to carry a folder, never liked a backpack, but he always kept his homework right there in his pocket with him at all times. And with it being his first year of high school, he had quite a few seniors that were his friends. So he was well loved. His dream and his goal, I think most of all, was to play sports. So that was his thing. He thought once he got in high school, he would play football. Girls and sports were his number one thing. He played sports from the age of 5 years old up until 14. He played basketball, loved skating. Skating was one of the things he loved the most, and baseball. Of course, every kid loved Christmas. He was 14 years old when he was murdered, but Christmas, I loved to surprise him. So one year I bought him the bike that he had dreamed of having, and he was the happiest person ever on that Christmas morning when he woke up to that bike. And actually, it was 2 years before he was murdered.
October 18th, 2001, Thursday at approximately 1800 hours, which would be 6 p.m. That evening, Dwayne and several of his friends and a cousin were standing out in front of his house on the northwest corner of Fern Rock and Tejada in the city of Carson. This area is basically known as the Leadership Track, which is a housing track. During that time, while Dwayne was outside along with his friends and his cousin, a taxi cab pulled up to the curb adjacent to his house. The right rear seat passenger said something to Dwayne and called out to him. And according to the witnesses, Dwayne couldn't hear what he said. So Dwayne approached the vehicle, and at that time the window was halfway down, but the window came all the way down, and Dwayne was approximately 5 feet from the vehicle. The right rear seat passenger put a shotgun out the window and fired in the direction of Dwayne, striking him. Dwayne was immediately hit, went down about 3 feet from where he was hit, and the taxi cab drove off in a westerly direction away from the crime scene. But the boys were standing on the front porch area of the house, and they immediately ran down to check on Dwayne. And Dwayne, unfortunately, was killed instantly from the shotgun blast.
I was right around the corner at the gas station when a friend of mine pulled up and said, "You need to drop the pump, you need to get home." He was so adamant about me leaving my gas that I thought, this is something that must be very important. So I left the gas, I drove around the corner, and as my daughter and I drove around the corner, Dad had taped off. And as we got closer, you could see my son just laying out in the driveway from where he had been shot. And I wanted to be like this was all a bad dream, and I would just wake up and say, wow, that was a scary moment. I'm dreaming. But it didn't turn out that way. It didn't turn out that way at all.
The vehicle is described as an older model, white Chevrolet Capri. They had a taxi cab emblem on top that said taxi. On the side of it, the right rear door had independent taxi written on it. And for all intents and purposes, people would believe that was a taxi that was in service. Through follow-up investigation, it was determined that that taxi cab was not associated with any local taxi company that we followed up on. There was also a phone number associated with the taxi cab, but the kids couldn't remember what the number was. So we believe that that vehicle was privately owned by somebody, or it was stolen and not reported, and that's how these suspects got a hold of the vehicle. The driver was described as a male African American, possibly in his 20s, a long jerry curl type hair, and the right rear passenger, the shooter, was described as a African American male who possibly also had a jerry curl, and he also possibly had a goatee. This is according to the witnesses on the scene.
The only thing I can get out of others is that this same car just drove around in the neighborhood for days, and there was some type of gang initiation where they were looking for someone to shoot for a gang.
The area where Dwayne lives is a gang area. It's infamous for the 190s, which is a street gang. It's a Crip gang, and during that time, even though Dwayne wasn't a documented gang member, he was associated by friends that were gang members. Could certainly have been mistaken identity, that these people that did this to Dwayne thought that he was a gang member and that they were doing some type of retaliation or some type of gang activity.
Did you realize that this was a baby? This was a kid. He just began his life. He was excited about beginning high school. He was excited about driving, learning how to drive. I refuse to move on because I feel like that person can do it again and again and again. When do we stop and say enough is enough? I can't bring my child back, of course, but helping to get him off the street could help other families. There's no hope for me. I mean, all I can do is get answers for what happened to my son, but that won't bring my son back. But helping to get him off the street will stop him from hurting others. And that's my goal, and that's what I'm determined to do.